In a valley nestled between towering mountain peaks, there lived a dragon named Karora. Unlike the other dragons of the valley, Karora was different. Her scales were a striking blend of sapphire blue, fiery orange, shimmering like the colors of a setting sun. She was fierce, powerful, and beautiful beyond measure. Yet the other creatures of the valley did not see her this way. From the moment Karora hatched, she was cast aside. Her parents, a pair of proud dragons who boasted long gleaming scales of silver and gold, took one look at their hatchling and frowned. They had hoped for a child whose scales would match their majestic colors, but instead their daughter was a curious mixture, a combination of blue and orange, like the fire and ice that should never meet. The elders of the valley said she was an omen, a sign of imbalance, and the other creatures of the land avoided her out of fear and prejudice. As Karora grew older, she became aware of her difference. She was strong, stronger than the other dragons, able to fly higher and breathe fire farther than most. But her beauty, the very thing that set her apart, was not admired by the others. Instead, they whispered behind her back, calling her a misfit or the outcast. The other dragons in her clan were graceful and proud. Their scales glittered in shades of gold and silver. They soared through the sky in perfect unison, while Karora often found herself alone, her wings slicing through the air with a certain wildness, as though she were trying to catch up with something she could not quite grasp. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't seem to fit in. One day, after a particularly lonely flight through the mountain pass, Karora found herself on the edge of a dark, dense forest. The trees were tall and ancient, their roots winding deep into the earth like veins of the world itself. As she gazed into the shadows of the woods, a voice broke the silence. "Why do you wander alone, young dragon?" Karora turned to see an old, wise-looking raven perched upon a branch above her. The bird's feathers were as black as the night sky, and its eyes gleamed with a knowing wisdom. "I don't belong anywhere," Karora replied, her voice heavy with sorrow. "The other dragons don't accept me because of my colors. They say I'm too fierce, too wild. They don't see my beauty." The raven tilted its head, its sharp beak glinting in the sunlight. "Beauty is not always what others see, young one. Beauty is what you see in yourself. And the strength you possess is a kind of beauty that not all can understand." "But how can I make them see?" Karora asked, her voice trembling. "How can I make them understand that I am not a mistake?" The raven fluttered its wings and flew down to the ground beside her. "You cannot force others to see your worth. Sometimes the journey to understand begins with seeing yourself, not through the eyes of others, but through your own." Karora looked at the raven, uncertain. "I don't know if I can do that. I've tried to fit in, but no matter how hard I try, they still call me an outcast." The raven studied her with piercing eyes and nodded. "Then you must go on a journey. Seek out the truth of your strength and your beauty. When you find it within yourself, the world will begin to change. It may take a time, but you are strong enough. The right ones will see you for who you truly are." With that, the raven spread its wings and soared off into the sky, leaving Karora standing in the shadow of the ancient tree. She was filled with both doubt and hope. The raven's words rang in her ears, but she didn't know how she could ever come to understand them. But Karora was nothing if not determined. She had always been strong, and this would not be different. She spread her powerful wings and took to the sky, her heart filled with a new resolve. Over the course of weeks, Karora journeyed far and wide, flying across the vast plains, through dark forests, over wild seas. She faced many challenges along the way, some of which tested her strength to the limits. She encountered fierce beasts and wild storms, each time emerging stronger, her wings growing more powerful Her fire fiercer, she learned that her beauty was not just in the color of her scales, but in the fire of her spirit, the courage she had kept going when the world seemed against her. In one particularly fierce battle, she found herself facing a giant fire-breathing serpent. It was a beast unlike any that she had encountered, its scales black as coal and its eyes glowing with malice. Karora fought with all her might, her blue and orange scales flashing like lightning as she dodged the serpent's deadly strikes. For hours they battled, neither willing to give in. But Karora, with her wild, untamed spirit, was not like the other dragons. She fought with a fierceness that came from deep within, and in the end she drove the serpent away, her fire scorching the creature's tail as it fled into the darkness. Breathing heavily, Karora stood victorious for the first time. She realized something important. Her strength came not from the way she looked or from fitting in with others' expectations, but within. She was beautiful not because of her colors, but because of the power that burned inside her. The power that could face any challenge, no matter how great. She continued her journey. Karora began to understand that the beauty she had been searching for wasn't something that others need to see. It was something she needed to recognize within herself. And when she did, everything else began to change. One day, as she flew back towards her home in the valley, she saw something different. The other dragons were gathered around, watching her with wide eyes. They had heard of her victories, of the strength she had shown, and the beauty she had discovered in herself. Karora landed gracefully before them, her wings folded against her back. For the first time she stood tall, unashamed of who she was. The other dragons stepped back, their eyes wide with awe. They had never seen her like this before, not because of her colors, but because of her fierce confidence that radiated from her. "You have returned," her mother said, her voice filled with both pride and hesitation. "I have returned," Karora replied, her voice steady. "And I have learned something important. I have learned that my beauty is not something that can be measured by others. It is something that comes from the strength within me, the fire that burns in my heart, and that is something no one can take away." The other dragons looked at each other in silence, and then one by one they nodded. They had seen the truth in her words, and in that moment they understood. Karora was not just a dragon of blue and orange scales. She was a dragon of fire and strength and of beauty. Beauty not because of what she looked like, but because of who she had become. And from that day forward, Karora was no longer the misfit. She was a dragon like no other, fierce, strong, and beautiful in her own right. And the valley, once filled with whispers of her differences, was now a place where she was respected, admired, and loved, not for her colors, but for the strength of her spirit.